The mysterious arrival. The vastness of space was quiet, almost unnervingly still. It was a usual day for the inhabitants of the galaxy, busy with their daily tasks, unaware of what was about to happen. The stars shone brightly, and the deep hum of the many ships filled the quiet void. But that silence was soon broken, and it would never be the same again. A small, unnoticed object appeared on the radar of the Xantar Federation. A peaceful, neutral race that had never been involved in the wars that scared so many others. At first, it seemed like a minor glitch, a speck that would vanish as quickly as it had appeared. But when the object grew larger on the scanners, the Federation's top officers began to take notice. "Increase the magnification," ordered General Zarnak, his voice calm but his mind racing. His fingers tapped the controls, zooming in on the tiny blip. There it was, a ship, dark and menacing. Its sleek design was unlike any of the Federation's allies or enemies. Its size was enormous, dwarfing any ship they had ever seen. But what worried General Zarnak the most was the fact that the ship showed no signs of being affiliated with any known race. It was alien in a way that couldn't be ignored. As the ship slowly approached the outer edges of the Xantar system, a strange sense of unease spread among the officers. Their sensors couldn't make sense of the ship's readings. It seemed to have no identification signals, no communication system active. It was as if it didn't exist at all. A vessel that appeared out of nowhere with no explanation, no markings. It was like it had always been there, waiting for the perfect moment to show itself. "What is it? Who is it?" whispered Lieutenant Valeria, staring at the ship in disbelief. She had been part of the Federation's fleet for years, and in all that time, she had never seen anything like it. It felt wrong, as if the ship was beyond anything they could understand. And worse, the longer they watched, the more it felt like it was watching them too. The Federation sent a message, hoping to learn more about this mysterious intruder. "Unknown vessel," they broadcast. "Identify yourself. This is the Xantar Federation. State your intentions immediately." But no reply came. The radio waves were met with silence. The lack of response made everyone more nervous. Normally, in situations like this, alien vessels would respond with some form of communication, even if it was hostile. But this ship, it did nothing. It just floated there, moving slowly but steadily through the darkness of space, heading directly towards the heart of the Xantar system. General Zarnak paced back and forth in the control room. His mind raced through the possibilities. Could it be a ship from a previously unknown race? Or worse, was it a warship from an enemy they had never encountered before? The Xantar Federation had been at peace for centuries, and the thought of war was a distant memory. But this ship changed everything. "We cannot just wait for it to reach us. Prepare our fleets for potential engagement," General Zarnak commanded. The officers immediately sprang into action, contacting all nearby ships to assemble. If this was a threat, they would be ready. But even as they scrambled to get into position, a strange doubt lingered. No one truly knew what they were up against. The ship continued its slow approach, and with each passing minute, the tension grew. No one dared to move, as if any sudden action would provoke the unknown vessel. What was it waiting for? Why hadn't it made a move? The longer the silence stretched, the more unsettling it became. The ship was almost within range, and still it remained silent. It didn't fire weapons, it didn't make a move. It just waited. From the corner of the control room, Lieutenant Valeria spoke up. "What if it's not hostile? What if it's just lost or looking for something?" Her voice trembled as she tried to make sense of it all. But even as she spoke the words, she knew they felt hollow. Nothing about this situation felt innocent. The Federation's fleet moved into position, their ships surrounding the unknown vessel from all sides. The starships were massive, their weapons primed and ready. General Zarnak gave the order to fire warning shots, hoping to provoke some sort of reaction. But again, there was only silence. The ship didn't respond. It didn't even flinch. "Why isn't it moving?" asked Commander Tiber, a senior officer who had seen countless battles and skirmishes. "What is this ship doing here? It's like it's waiting." The feeling of dread grew heavier. Something wasn't right. This wasn't how things normally worked. Even the most hostile ships would show signs of aggression. But this one, it simply watched them from the dark. It was as if it had all the time in the universe, and the rest of them were just pawns in a much larger game. As the warship circled around the massive vessel, the lights in the control room flickered, and the temperature seemed to drop slightly. It was as though the very atmosphere of the room had changed. Everyone's eyes were glued to the screens, unable to look away from the dark shape of the unknown warship. Then something happened. A strange signal, unlike any they had ever received, began to echo through the Federation's communication system. It was low, like a hum, a frequency that seemed to vibrate deep in the bones of everyone who heard it. It was alien, unnatural, and yet it felt intentional, but no one could decipher it. And with that, the Xantar Federation knew that they were not dealing with a mere ship. This was a warning, a harbinger of something far more dangerous. The galaxy was about to change. And the question that lingered in the air was, what did this ship want from them? The eerie hum of the mysterious signal continued to echo throughout the control room, sending shivers down everyone's spine. The Federation officers, once confident and calm in their duties, now felt an overwhelming sense of fear. What was happening? Why wasn't the unknown ship responding to their communications? Why did it remain so still, so ominously silent? General Zarnak stood at the front of the room, his eyes glued to the massive monitor displaying the ship. His mind raced. He had seen many things in his long career: alien ships, unknown technologies, and even hostile attacks. But this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The silence of the unknown ship was unbearable, as though it was studying them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And yet it didn't move. It didn't attack. It simply hovered in the void, a black silhouette against the stars. "Has there been any change in its position?" General Zarnak asked, his voice steady but betraying a hint of unease. Lieutenant Valeria, who had been monitoring the ship's movements, looked at the readouts. "No, sir. It's still in the same position, just sitting there. We've tried all the protocols for communication, but there's no response. It's like it's ignoring us, ignoring them." The thought alone made the officers uneasy. No alien ship would ignore a fleet of warships unless it was certain it had no need to respond. The more Zarnak thought about it, the more he realized how dangerous this situation was. This wasn't just a ship, it was a statement. Whoever, or whatever, was aboard that vessel was playing a game that the Xantar Federation couldn't yet comprehend. "Have we received any information from the other systems?" Zarnak asked, turning to another officer who was frantically tapping on a terminal. The officer shook his head. "No, sir. No one has heard of anything like this before. We've sent messages to all the surrounding systems, but there's no word. It's as if this ship appeared out of thin air." The feeling of isolation was growing. The Federation was a powerful force in the galaxy, and yet it felt as if they were completely alone. The unknown ship, now hovering near the heart of their system, didn't care about their strength, their history, or their numbers. It was a reminder that they were not the only power in the universe. In fact, they might not be a power at all. They were a tiny speck in the grand scheme of things, and this ship was a reminder of that fact. General Zarnak stared at the ship's image on the screen. There was something deeply unsettling about it. It didn't even look like a conventional warship. It was sleek, almost too smooth, like it had been designed to reflect no light at all. No markings, no insignia. The ship didn't look like it was meant to be found. It was a ghost, a shadow in space. "We need to take action," Commander Tiber spoke, his voice sharp with concern. "We can't just sit here and wait. We need to know what it wants. We need to force it to show its hand." But General Zarnak didn't respond immediately. His mind was working in overdrive. He knew the Federation's strength, but he also knew the risks of provoking something so unknown. He had seen countless fleets march into battle with confidence, only to be destroyed by forces they couldn't understand. This ship, whatever it was, had already shown them that it didn't operate on their terms. It didn't obey their rules. They couldn't force it into anything. The ship would do as it pleased. "We must remain cautious," Zarnak finally said, his voice steady but filled with authority. "We have no idea what this ship is capable of. We need to gather more information. If we strike without knowing what we're dealing with, we could be walking into a trap." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The officers understood the gravity of Zarnak's words. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. Every move they made had to be precise. Every decision could have unimaginable consequences. The mysterious ship remained motionless, as though it was daring them to act, to make the first move. And yet, the Federation couldn't. They were paralyzed, caught between the urge to strike and the knowledge that they knew nothing about their enemy. Outside, in the dark expanse of space, the ship remained. Its surface shimmered faintly, almost imperceptibly. There was no heat signature, no indication that it was using any energy at all. It was like a ghost in space, and the longer it sat there, the more unnerving it became. "Send a recon team to investigate the area," General Zarnak ordered after a long pause. "We need to understand what we're up against. I'll contact the fleet commanders and prepare for all scenarios. No one acts until we know more." The tension in the room was palpable as the officers scrambled to carry out the order. A small fleet of reconnaissance ships was dispatched to the outer edges of the system, but even as they left, the feeling of dread didn't subside. The Federation was watching the unknown ship, and the unknown ship was watching them right back. No one knew what would happen next, but everyone could feel it, the quiet before the storm. As the recon ships moved closer, the hum of the mysterious signal grew louder, vibrating through the walls of the control room. It was as if the ship was alive, a living force that didn't just exist in the physical world, but resonated on a deeper level. It was almost as if it was waiting for something, waiting for them to make a move. But still, nothing happened. No attack. No response. The fear of the unknown lingered, growing stronger with every passing second. And then, just as the recon ships were about to reach the outer perimeter of the system, the unimaginable happened. A burst of light. A sudden pulse that sent shockwaves through the Federation sensors. It was a warning. And this time, it wasn't the ship that was waiting. It was the Federation. The moment of truth had arrived. The shockwave hit like a thunderclap, rattling the very foundations of the control room. Officers scrambled to maintain their positions as alarms blared, and the once quiet hum of the ship's systems turned into a frantic cacophony. Everyone's eyes were glued to their screens, trying to make sense of what was happening. For a moment, it felt like time had slowed, as if the galaxy itself had held its breath in anticipation. "Status report." General Zarnak's voice rang out, firm and commanding. Lieutenant Valeria was the first to respond, her face pale as she worked furiously at her terminal. "Sir, we're getting massive energy fluctuations coming from the unknown ship. It's not just a simple signal anymore. There's a pulse of energy heading straight toward our fleet." "What kind of energy?" Zarnak asked, his tone tight with tension. "Hard to tell, sir. The readings are off the scale. It's unlike anything we've encountered. It could be some kind of weapon, or it could be a transmission. We just don't know yet." The officers exchanged nervous glances. The ship had already shown it was capable of emitting an unknown signal. But this was different. This wasn't just a warning. This was an aggressive move, a challenge. "Raise shields. Prepare for impact," General Zarnak ordered, his voice calm despite the growing panic in the room. He knew that the unknown ship wasn't playing by any rules. It wasn't going to give them a second chance. The seconds felt like hours as the Federation fleet's shields powered up, their energy fields flickering into existence around the ships. The unknown ship, still floating in space, hadn't moved an inch, but the danger it posed was undeniable. The Federation had no idea what it was capable of, and that uncertainty gnawed at their every move. And then, without warning, it happened. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the unknown ship, a pulse of energy so intense that it lit up the dark expanse of space. The Federation ships, caught off guard, barely had time to brace. The energy pulse struck with devastating force, slamming into the fleet's shields and sending shockwaves through every vessel. The shields held, but just barely. The energy was unlike anything the Federation had ever faced. It wasn't just raw power, it was precise, controlled, almost intelligent in its design. The Federation's shields, normally impervious to most threats, shuddered under the pressure, their systems flashing warnings. "Shields holding at 70%, sir," Lieutenant Valeria reported, her voice strained. "But the power of that blast is unlike anything we've seen before. It's adapting to our defense systems." Zarnak's eyes narrowed. This was no random attack. The unknown ship wasn't just firing blindly. It was learning. It had already figured out the weakness in their shields, and it was adjusting its attacks accordingly. He had to act quickly. If the ship kept adjusting, the Federation fleet might not survive another round. "Return fire. All ships, open fire with everything we have," Zarnak ordered, his voice cold with determination. A volley of laser blasts and missiles erupted from the fleet, streaking toward the unknown ship. But just as the weapons reached their target, the mysterious vessel shifted, almost as if it had anticipated their move. The blasts simply vanished into thin air, absorbed by a shimmering force field that surrounded the ship. It wasn't just a shield. It was a barrier, a perfect defense against their attacks. The Federation's weapons had no effect. It was as if the unknown ship existed in a completely different realm, impervious to everything the Federation could throw at it. "How is it possible?" Commander Tiber yelled, staring at the screen in disbelief. "Our weapons should have been more than enough to break through that shield. How is it stopping everything?" General Zarnak gritted his teeth. He knew that the Federation was facing something extraordinary, something they had no experience with. This was no ordinary alien ship. It was something far more advanced, far more dangerous. But there was no time to dwell on that. The Federation had to find a way to fight back, quickly. Zarnak turned to his officers. "Focus all fire on that ship's power core," Zarnak commanded. "If we can disable its power source, maybe we can break through its defenses." The fleet's weapons adjusted their targeting systems, and another wave of firepower surged toward the mysterious ship. But once again, the unknown ship effortlessly dodged their attacks. It wasn't even trying to escape. It was simply outmatching them at every turn. The Federation's frustration was growing. The alien ship didn't seem to care about their tactics. It was playing a game on its own terms, and the Federation was losing. Suddenly, a voice from the communication console broke the tense silence. "General Zarnak, we're receiving a message. It's from the unknown ship." Zarnak's heart skipped a beat. A message. From the ship that had just attacked them with terrifying power. He glanced at the screen, and a moment later, the message appeared. It was a single, simple line, but the word sent a chill through everyone in the room. "You have been warned." There was no reply, no explanation. The message was cold, emotionless, and final. Whoever was behind this ship didn't care to communicate any further. It wasn't interested in negotiation. It wasn't interested in anything except sending a clear warning. The Federation fleet sat in stunned silence, processing the implications of the message. The unknown ship wasn't just a threat. It was an invader. And the Federation was now at the mercy of its unknown power. "We're in trouble," Commander Tiber whispered, his voice shaky. "We need help. We can't fight this thing alone." Zarnak's mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. But no plan could prepare them for what had just happened. The Federation had underestimated the power of the unknown ship. And now, they were facing the consequences. The battle for survival had only just begun. The silence following the ominous message hung heavy over the Federation fleet. General Zarnek's mind raced as he tried to understand what they were up against. No one had seen anything like this before. No one had anticipated a warship that was both invincible and coldly intelligent. Their systems were failing, their weapons were ineffective, and their shields were being tested to their limits. The unknown ship remained silent after its chilling message. It wasn't advancing, but it wasn't retreating either. It hung in the darkness of space, watching, waiting. It seemed to have no urgency, no need to press its advantage. It was simply allowing the Federation to struggle, like a predator toying with its prey. Status update, Zarnek ordered, his voice calm but edged with frustration. He needed information, anything that might give him a clue on how to fight back. Lieutenant Valeria's fingers flew over her console, her face growing paler with each passing second. "Sir, we're still unable to get an accurate read on its weapon systems, but based on the energy signature from earlier, it seems like it's either a form of energy weapon or some kind of advanced electromagnetic pulse." "EMP?" Zarnek asked, his brow furrowing. "Yes, sir. It's possible that the ship is using an EMP-like attack to disable our electronics and power systems. That would explain why our weapons aren't working. Anything that relies on electricity would be easily disabled," Valeria explained. Zarnek's mind spun with the possibilities. If the unknown ship had the ability to disrupt their power systems, it could neutralize the entire fleet without firing a single shot. The Federation was effectively sitting ducks. "Can we counter it? Do we have any defenses against an EMP?" Zarnek asked, his voice low but urgent. "We've been working on EMP shields for a while, but they aren't fully developed, sir," Valeria admitted. "We have some basic shielding that can resist a smaller EMP pulse, but nothing that could block a full-scale attack like this." Zarnek's stomach tightened. If they didn't find a way to fight back soon, the fleet would be wiped out before they even had a chance to strike back. "Understood," he said, trying to keep his composure. "We need to think fast. Prepare the fleet for manual combat. If our tech is down, we fight without it." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Manual combat, fighting without the advantage of their advanced weaponry and technology, was a last resort, something they hadn't had to consider in decades. The Federation fleet was powerful, but it relied on cutting-edge technology to maintain that power. Without it, they were vulnerable. As the fleet began to prepare for manual combat, Zarnek couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The unknown ship had already demonstrated its ability to anticipate their moves, to predict their actions. It was as though it had complete control over the situation. "General," a voice interrupted his thoughts. Commander Tiber stepped forward, his expression grim. "We've received a strange signal. It's not from the ship. It's coming from the station on the edge of the system." Zarnek's brow furrowed. "What kind of signal?" "It's hard to describe," Tiber replied. "It's some kind of transmission. It's not in any language we recognize. It's not an attack, but it's definitely coming from the station." Zarnek's mind raced again. A transmission. From the station. It could be a trap, or it could be their only chance to get some kind of information that could help them fight back. Without hesitation, he ordered Tiber to open the communication channel. The station appeared on the screen, its ancient and worn-out exterior glowing softly in the void of space. A single transmission beam shot out from the station, flickering like a dying light. And then the message came through. It wasn't in any language the Federation knew. Instead, it was a series of strange, rhythmic beats, patterns of sounds that almost seemed to pulse in a beat. For a moment, the room was silent as everyone tried to interpret the message. "What is it?" Zarnek asked, looking to his team for answers. Lieutenant Valeria furrowed her brow as she studied the transmission. "It's something we've never seen before. It's not any kind of communication we've encountered." Commander Tiber stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. It's almost like the signal is alive. It feels like it's pulsing with intention, not just static. Zarnak's mind clicked into overdrive. The unknown ship, the station, and now this mysterious signal. It all felt connected, like a puzzle they hadn't yet begun to solve. And something about the signal felt off. It wasn't just alien. It was something more. Something that didn't belong. "Can we trace the origin of the signal?" Zarnak asked. Valeria shook her head. "It's bouncing all around the system. It's almost like it's intentionally hiding its true location." Zarnak felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. They were surrounded by forces they didn't understand, forces that were deliberately hiding their true nature. The Federation's fleet was powerless, their technology failing them, and their enemies seemed to know everything about them. They had been lured into a trap. "We need to move fast," Zarnak said, his voice hard with resolve. "Prepare to send a team to the station. We need to find out who or what is behind that signal." The officers nodded, but Zarnak knew that their chances of success were slim. The unknown forces had already proven themselves more than capable of manipulating the situation. Whatever was hidden behind the signal, it would not be easy to uncover. And time was running out. As Zarnak looked back at the unknown ship, still hanging motionless in the distance, he knew one thing for sure. The Federation was facing an enemy far beyond anything they had ever prepared for, and unless they found answers, they wouldn't survive the encounter. The battle for survival was just beginning. And it was only going to get worse. The Federation's fleet sat in uneasy stillness as General Zarnak stared out into the vast expanse of space. The unknown warship still hovered there, silent and ominous. It had not moved, but its presence felt suffocating. The sense of dread grew stronger with every passing moment. The signal from the station had been intercepted, but it made no sense. Every expert and technician on board the fleet had analyzed it for hours, but nothing concrete had come up. It was like the signal was a riddle, and they were still missing the key to solving it. "Sir, we've got a new development," Lieutenant Valeria said, her voice tense as she approached Zarnak. "What is it?" Zarnak asked, turning to face her. "It's about the signal from the station. We've identified something strange. We've traced the origin of the signal to a specific location, hidden on one of the moons near the outer rim. But there's something else." Valeria paused, her eyes scanning the screen in front of her. "It's not just a signal, it's a map, and it leads to something we don't know." Zarnak felt a cold chill run down his spine. A map? To what? Valeria hesitated. To an ancient structure, an installation from before the Federation's time. "It seems like it's been hidden for centuries." A sense of unease spread across the room. This was not just an ordinary alien signal. This was something far deeper, something that had been hidden for a reason. It was clear now. They weren't just fighting an enemy. They were stumbling into a trap. But a trap for what? "Do we know what's inside that structure?" Zarnak asked. "No, sir. That's the issue," Valeria responded, her voice tight with uncertainty. "There's no clear data on what the installation contains, but the map's design. It's sophisticated, like something far beyond what we're used to." Zarnak's mind raced. What could this ancient installation hold? And why had it been hidden for so long? "We need to send a team to investigate it," Zarnak said, his voice determined. "If that structure holds answers, we have no choice but to find them." The officers around him nodded in agreement. The unknown ship, the strange signal, the ancient map, it was all starting to feel like part of a much larger puzzle, one that had been carefully concealed, and now they were on the verge of uncovering its secrets. Zarnak turned to Commander Tiber, who had been quietly observing the situation. "Prepare a team to explore the moon. We leave as soon as possible. We need to know what we're dealing with before it's too late." Tiber saluted, his expression grim. "Understood, sir." As Zarnak watched Tiber leave to gather the team, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown pressing in on him. They were heading into a situation they didn't understand. For all they knew, the ancient installation could be a weapon of unimaginable power, waiting to be triggered. The fleet's comm systems hummed with activity as preparations were made. As the team gathered in the hangar bay, ready to depart, Zarnak's thoughts turned back to the silent warship. It was still there, motionless and watching. "General, we're ready for deployment," Commander Tiber reported, walking into the command room. "Good," Zarnak replied, his voice steady but filled with underlying tension. "Keep me informed. If anything goes wrong, I want to know immediately." As the team boarded their shuttle and moved toward the moon's surface, Zarnak stood in the command room, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched by something far more intelligent, far more dangerous than they had imagined. The shuttle entered the moon's atmosphere, and Zarnak's mind raced. What would they find? An ancient weapon, a lost civilization, or something far worse? The shuttle landed with a soft thud on the rocky surface of the moon. The team disembarked, their boots crunching against the cold, barren ground. The air was thin, and the moon's surface was bathed in an eerie greenish glow. The map from the station's signal had led them to a vast underground complex. A hidden door slid open as they approached, revealing a long, dark corridor. The walls were lined with strange symbols that none of them recognized. "Stay alert," Zarnak's voice crackled through their comms as he watched the team from the ship's command center. "Report anything unusual immediately." The team moved forward cautiously, weapons drawn, the low hum of their suits the only sound. Each step they took seemed to echo in the silence of the complex. The walls glowed faintly, but there were no signs of life, no signs of anything that could explain what this place was. At the end of the corridor, a massive door stood, covered in intricate patterns. A strange, almost magnetic pull seemed to come from it, as if the door itself was waiting for them. "We found something," one of the team members called out, his voice filled with awe. "Open it," Zarnak commanded, though his own heart was pounding. He knew that whatever lay behind that door could change everything. The door creaked as it slowly opened, revealing a massive chamber beyond. In the center stood a glowing device, pulsating with energy. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. As they approached it, a voice filled the room, a voice that seemed to resonate from the very walls of the chamber. "You are not welcome here." The team froze. The voice was not human, nor was it alien. It was something else entirely, a warning, a promise. And then the lights in the chamber flickered, and the walls began to shake. The ground trembled beneath them. Zarnak could feel it, the beginning of something terrible. The past, the unknown warship, the ancient installation, they were all connected, and now there was no turning back. The chamber trembled as the voice echoed in their minds, reverberating with power. It was not just a warning, it was a command. The ground beneath them shook with an intensity that sent a chill down their spines. The team struggled to keep their footing as the lights flickered and buzzed erratically. Zarnak's voice crackled through the comms, tight with urgency. "Get out of there, now." But it was too late. The moment the warning was issued, the pulsating energy at the center of the room flared up, and the entire chamber lit up in a blinding flash of blue light. The team members staggered back, shielding their eyes. The air became thick with an overwhelming, oppressive force. As the light dimmed, the team looked around in disbelief. The chamber was no longer just a structure of stone and metal. It had transformed. The walls were now covered in strange symbols that glowed with a menacing red hue. The atmosphere felt thick, as if the very air was alive, pressing against them. "Sir, something's wrong." Lieutenant Valeria's voice came through their comms, trembling. "The structure, it's changing. It's alive." Zarnak's heart raced. He had feared this moment would come, but he had never imagined it would be so immediate. The ancient installation was not just a relic from the past. It was something far more dangerous, something designed to protect itself. We need to leave now. Zarnak barked again, his voice sharp with authority. Get back to the shuttle. Move, move, move. The team scrambled toward the exit, but something was wrong. The door they had entered through had vanished, replaced by a solid wall. Panic began to set in as they realized they were trapped. Captain, the door is gone, shouted Commander Tiber, his voice filled with fear. We're stuck in here. Zarnak's mind raced. They couldn't stay trapped in this place. The energy in the room was growing stronger, and he feared what might happen next. He quickly assessed the situation. They had no choice but to find another way out. Look for any other exits, anything, Zarnak ordered. Search the walls, the floor, anything. We can't afford to stay here much longer. The team split up, frantically scanning every inch of the room. They found nothing at first. The walls were solid, unyielding. The air itself seemed to hum with an unseen force, pressing in on them. Each second felt like an eternity. Then one of the team members, Corporal Darn, shouted, I found something. His voice echoed through the chamber, filled with a mix of relief and confusion. The others rushed to his side. He was standing in front of a section of the wall that seemed slightly different from the rest. It had a faint, glowing scene running through it, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Darn pushed against it, and to everyone's astonishment, the wall shifted, revealing a narrow passageway. Good work, Darn, Zarnak said, his voice filled with both urgency and gratitude. Everyone, move through. Now, the team wasted no time in entering the passage. It was narrow and winding, and the air grew colder with every step. The walls here were lined with more of the strange symbols, pulsating with an eerie light that made it seem as though the installation itself was alive, watching them. As they moved deeper into the structure, the hum of the energy grew louder. Zarnak couldn't shake the feeling that they were being led somewhere, as if the installation itself was guiding them toward a final destination. But why? And what would they find when they reached it? Minutes later, they arrived at another chamber. This one was vast, even larger than the last. At the center stood a massive structure, a towering obelisk of shimmering metal, surrounded by swirling patterns of light. It radiated an energy unlike anything Zarnak had ever felt before. His skin tingled with the intensity of it. And then it spoke again. You have awakened what should have remained forgotten. The voice boomed, louder than before. You are not prepared for what you seek. Zarnak's heart skipped a beat. The voice was everywhere, inside his head, echoing in the very air around them. It was as though the installation itself was alive, speaking directly to them. Who are you? Zarnak demanded, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his mind. I am the Guardian, the voice answered, cold and emotionless. I was left to protect this place, to ensure that no one would ever discover what lies beneath. You are the first in 1,000 years to reach this chamber. What's beneath it? Zarnak pressed, his mind racing. What is this place? The voice fell silent for a moment, and then the ground beneath them began to tremble again. The energy in the room intensified, swirling around them in a tornado of light and sound. What lies beneath is a power beyond your understanding, the voice finally said. You have already triggered the process. There is no turning back now. Zarnak felt a cold chill spread through his veins. They had uncovered something ancient, something powerful. But at what cost? As the energy continued to build, Zarnak realized they were no longer in control. The installation was reacting to their presence, to their interference. The fear that had been growing in his chest turned into something far more terrifying, a sense of helplessness. The team stood frozen, unable to move as the room seemed to collapse in on itself. The power inside the chamber surged, and Zarnak knew one thing for certain. They had awakened something that could change the course of the entire galaxy. But whether that change would be for better or worse, they were about to find out. The room vibrated violently, the very air pulsing with a raw energy that seemed to tear at the fabric of reality itself. The ground beneath their feet trembled as if it were about to collapse into a chasm. The strange obelisk at the center of the chamber glowed brighter, its light now blinding, causing the team to shield their eyes from the overwhelming brilliance. "Get down," Zarnak yelled, pushing the closest members to the floor, his own heart pounding in his chest. His mind was racing. What had they awakened? What terrible power had they stumbled upon? The voice, cold and powerful, boomed through the chamber again. "You are too late. The process has begun. You cannot undo what you have done." Zarnak's breathing quickened as he scanned the room, looking for an escape, but there was nowhere to run. The walls were shifting, pulsing with the same eerie energy that filled the room. He could feel the ground beneath him rumbling, as if something massive was stirring below. "We're trapped," shouted Lieutenant Valeria, her voice filled with panic. "We have to do something. Now." Zarnak could feel his pulse racing, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The installation was alive, and it was reacting to their presence. The very structure was becoming unstable, and every second brought them closer to disaster. The air around them seemed to distort, crackling with energy. "We don't have much time," Zarnak said, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at him. "We need to make a decision. Now." Commander Tiber, his face pale with anxiety, looked up at Zarnak. "What do we do? There's no way out. The only way out is to stop it. But how?" Zarnak's mind worked quickly. The voice had told them they were too late, that the process had already begun. But what process? What was this installation trying to do? He looked at the obelisk again, the swirling lights around it growing more intense. Then it hit him. "The obelisk," Zarnak said, pointing. "It's not just a power source. It's controlling everything. The energy, the chamber, the walls. It's all connected to it. Are you saying we need to destroy it?" Valeria asked, disbelief in her voice. "That's crazy. It's too powerful. We don't have a choice," Zarnak snapped. "Either we destroy it, or we die with it." Tiber swallowed hard, clearly shaken, but nodded. "Understood. But how do we destroy it?" Zarnak hesitated, his gaze locked on the glowing obelisk. His mind raced through every possibility, every scenario. But there was only one thing that made sense. The obelisk had to be the key to this entire structure, to the power that had been awakened. If they could disrupt its energy, they might stand a chance. "There must be a control mechanism nearby," Zarnak said, his voice steady. "Something to power it on or off. We find that, and we destroy it." The team spread out, searching frantically for any hint of a control system. The chamber's walls continued to pulse with energy, but Zarnak's focus remained sharp. Time was running out. They could feel it, the building pressure, the sense of impending doom that filled the very air they breathed. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Zarnak saw something. A small, hidden panel in the wall, partially obscured by debris. It glowed faintly, almost as though it were waiting to be activated. "Over here," Zarnak shouted, rushing to the panel. The rest of the team quickly joined him. Zarnak pressed his hand against the panel, feeling a strange warmth emanating from it. The moment he made contact, the energy in the room seemed to shift. The pulsing light from the obelisk grew brighter, and the sound of machinery coming to life filled the chamber. "It's working," Valeria whispered, her eyes wide with fear and hope. "This is it. This is the control." Zarnak's heart raced as he began pressing the buttons on the panel. The machine inside hummed louder, its power surging as the lights around them flickered wildly. The entire structure seemed to groan, as if it were alive and resisting their attempts to disable it. But Zarnak didn't stop. He pressed the final button, and the room fell silent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the obelisk's light flickered and dimmed. The intense energy in the room began to dissipate, and the rumbling of the ground slowly stopped. The walls, which had been pulsing with life, now stood still, as if the very heart of the installation had stopped beating. Zarnak let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. We did it. But just as they began to relax, the voice returned. It was quieter now, almost a whisper, but still full of malice. You cannot undo what has been set in motion. The galaxy will feel the consequences of your actions. You have only delayed the inevitable. The team exchanged uneasy glances. Zarnak felt a knot tighten in his stomach. They had survived. But what had they truly stopped? What had they set in motion? The question hung in the air, unanswered. As the chamber settled into an eerie calm, the team knew one thing for certain. Their journey was far from over. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would they. With the threat now neutralized, they could only wonder, what had they awakened, and what would the galaxy's future hold?